Welcome to Co-Opinions. I'm your host, Josh, and today we have Brent with me.
Hey.
And special guest, Alex.
Hello.
So let's go ahead and launch into our normal start. Brent, why don't you tell me if there was any small news over the last few weeks that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, since we last recorded, Nintendo did not show up to
Tokyo
TGS.
Game Show?
Yeah.
But they said they weren't going to.
We've debated.
They said it.
Okay.
I mean, Alex, do you follow that stuff at all?
Admittedly, I don't. It's just little tidbits as I hear them.
Nintendo hasn't shown up to TGS historically. It's been years they haven't showed up. So this is not a surprise. A lot of people were hoping they would because the NX is supposed to come out in 6 months and we haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
But we did hear from the president of the company that makes Pokemon that the rumor that there would be a Pokemon NX game is true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just that. We have heard Ubisoft say that the NX is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Of all the people, they pulled support on the Wii U after Assassin's Creed 3.
Yeah.
That's back in the day. We've heard other people say it's going to be a game changer. We've heard that the Splatoon tournament will have prizes of the NX, which, personal speculation, I believe that the finals are going to be on Splatoon 2 on the NX. That is my belief. But nothing founded on it, pure speculation.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about console news, we got the PS4 Slim was leaked by reviewers.
It was, and
And the Pro was announced.
so, Alex, did you see the feedback people were giving about the Pro?
I haven't seen the feedback. I just saw what Brent had mentioned where, like, yeah, there were leaks. It almost seemed intentional. Like, I don't know, that seemed a little silly. But, yeah, and then, of course, the news drop and just people's knee-jerk reactions, but not actual feedback.
Tactical leaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah.
Anyways, Brent, did you see the feedback people were giving online?
Not really.
Negative.
Yeah,
It was
I've
overwhelmingly negative
About the Slim or the Pro?
about the Pro.
Oh.
Because it doesn't have a 4K player built in.
Which is weird when you consider Blu-ray is a native product for Sony since they made Blu-ray.
Yeah, Sony's the one pushing 4K.
Yeah.
So it's curious that the Pro is not going to incorporate that.
Yeah.
And all the other things that the Pro can supposedly do. I know HDR, which is lighting, isn't it?
It's
Really?
high dynamic range.
And isn't the Pro being released? Isn't the timing for the VR like with the Pro? I feel like that's a thing.
I'm not 100% sure when it is being released, but one thing that does have people up in arms, and either of you might have heard this, they said that the HDR patches, because they'll be able to implement HDR support to older games, that might not be free. So you might have to pay money to get Uncharted 4 patched for HDR.
Just not expecting that.
Yeah, do you want to really pay $5 so your whites are a little whiter and your blacks are a little black? Now, is that what HDR is?
It's trying to high dynamic range, and as I understand it, it's like you said, it's mainly a lighting thing. I know that the Source engine, Half-Life 2 and all that stuff, that was something that they implemented later on. So when you play Half-Life 2, I don't think it had, well, unless this has changed recently, but if you played Half-Life 2 back in the day, it did not have any sort of HDR craziness, but if you played Episode 1 and 2, I believe, definitely for 2 and maybe for Episode 1, high dynamic range was added, and you would show up in things like if you exit a cave, for example, you're in this like really dark area and you exit a cave and you look at the sun, you know how with your eyes, in those instances where if you go from really dark to really bright super quick, it takes your eyes a second to kind of adjust. The screen will kind of do that. It'll, not blindingly so, but there will be this obvious transition that's not exactly jarring, but it's an interesting little visual trick to make it seem like, oh, hey, this is how my eyeballs work.
I do think I remember that from Half-Life Episode 2, so...
Definitely Episode 2.
What's really curious about that is that they expected there to be a certain amount of resource necessity to implement this. However, when they started rolling people out, apparently Infamous First Light, which was the DLC for Second Son, it only required one developer to implement HDR for that.
Yep.
So apparently this is not very resource intensive, so they said they might charge for HDR patches, which they could, but I'm curious if that's just something that they're going to go, we're going to just... We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Any other news of significance?
Since we last recorded the Scorpio news, that it would be the end to console generations.
You heard about this, right?
kind of similarly, I heard the little tidbits and snippets, but I kind of took that stuff with a grain of salt, so I didn't really pay much attention to that.
And that's the thing. The way they're selling this is iterative hardware.
Yeah, so I've heard.
And Nick brought this point up.
Yeah.
I brought everybody.
Yeah.
How is it different from a PC at that point?
Yeah.
So they go, you need to get a new Microsoft graphics unit.
Yep.
And then NVIDIA goes, well, ours is a little cheaper.
Yeah.
And then AMD comes out and goes, us too. It's identical at that point.
It's a little silly. I don't know. I didn't pay attention to it just because I didn't take it seriously.
It's gonna be, they're going to pilot it. I have a hunch it ain't gonna pay out.
Like Marco's, well, they're just naming it versions. I'm like, so you've taken away console generations to microtransaction it into version 1.5, and this is just terrible.
And that's the other thing, is that at what point does the frame of it need to be replaced, and then does it go from the Scorpio 1.0 to the 2.0? There's so many weird
it was like I was talking to Mark, I'm like, so what happens when is the motherboard in the box? What happens? The motherboard isn't going to be something that can last forever. There's going to need to be a new motherboard. Yeah. So are you just selling me a box with the power supply? At what point am I getting
even the
new
power
box?
The power supply would need to be replaced at some point.
So when I'm getting a new box, when is this not just a console? His joking argument was, well, all the other parts fit back into the new one. It's like, that's not different.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. I don't know. It does seem to be part of I don't know if it's like this new big strategy of Microsoft's, but didn't they say something similar about Windows 10? Like, oh, this is our last operating system.
Yeah,
well, they're competing with Apple's whole, this is our last iOS.
Right. So I wonder if they're like trying to like stretch that to fit other parts of their markets. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it makes me wonder like if they're trying to like, ooh, this is our new business strategy and trying to make it all fancy.
A lot of things are going subscription-based in lieu of new things. For example, Adobe, I believe, their Photoshop now it's just subscription-based. You don't buy a new creative suite every year. They just have the subscription and you update it. I believe that's the case. That's what Kara has told me. Okay. So, anyways, any more small news, Brent?
That was all that came off the top of my head.
So, what have you beaten since we last recorded?
Since we last recorded, I knocked out Dishonored. I knocked out its 2 story DLCs. I am psyched for Dishonored 2 now.
Nice.
And I believe I bought you that as a present last Christmas.
You did.
I did, because Dishonored was amazing. Funny story, I've actually bought Alex Dishonored too. I bought it for him on a Steam sale.
A redonk Steam sale.
Yeah, they actually screwed up the pricing on that really bad. It was supposed to go on sale.
I remember that now.
It was supposed to go on sale for like 40% off, and it was on sale for like 97% off. I got it for like $1. I saw it post up, and I go, literally anybody who wants this, I will buy it for them. And Alex already has like 900 unbeaten Steam games, but this is $1.
Yeah.
Boom.
I saw it. I was like, oh, that's so nice of him. And then, I talked to him about it later. I mentioned, it's like, and it was like the fancy schmancy, like, Game of the Year edition with like all the DLC. It's like, it cost me like $3. I was like, dude, how did I miss this ridiculous sale?
It was up for 90 seconds max. I never even got a receipt from Steam for it.
Yeah. We should never let people know that we did this.
Yeah. No, I saw them try to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. And then you got me to play Inside, which I just beat.
If you have any interest in playing Inside, we cannot talk about it.
Well, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just saying I beat it before we started this show. So
Inside was created by Playdead, the people who made Limbo.
Yeah.
It has been described as Super Limbo, and now that you've beaten it, Super Mario Brothers was followed by Super Mario World. Yeah. So this is basically Super Limbo World.
Dude, I love Limbo so much.
You need to buy this game.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's amazing.
For this podcast, I started Banjo-Kazooie, which I'm this close to beating. Almost had it done for today.
My heart grew 3 sizes this day.
I love the twinkle in your eye because, buddy, that's not what I got.
Dude, I love that game. Both 1 and Kazooie and 2. I love those games.
I have a funny anecdote about the sequel when we get to it.
Oh, yeah? I think I might have heard this, actually.
Probably. You're good then, Brett?
Yep.
How about you, Alex? You got any little news that jumped out at you or any games that you've been playing or beaten recently you'd like to talk about?
As far as news items, I didn't really have anything off the top of my head.
Okay.
As far as latest games that I've beaten, I actually went back. I had technically beaten this already, but I had never really gotten to beat it at my own pace. Was Diablo 3, the, what do you call it?
Ultimate Evil Edition?
Yeah. Well, no, just the expansion. Because
Reaper of Souls.
Yeah. Because I'd beaten that with a couple of friends when it first came out, but they just power game through it, and I never really had a chance to listen to any dialogue or any story. They just wanted to blaze through it, which was fine. But I never get a chance to really play it at my own pace. So I just single playered all the way through it and devoured as much of the lore as I could and stuff like that, and actually knew what was happening. So now I feel like I'm fairly caught up in the Diablo world.
I remember when they were selling, some high-end figure people were selling a figure of Diablo from Diablo 3.
Yeah.
And I didn't play Diablo 3. I was super hyped for it, and then right before it came out, I just Zeppelin. My hype was gone.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw the figure and I go, is Diablo a woman in this? And I won't spoil anything for people who haven't played it, but yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
Anything else you've been playing?
That's the most recent thing that I've beaten. A couple things I've played, but
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Because we have been on hiatus for a while here because I moved into a new place, really haven't had a chance to beat anything, and I've only started up very little. I started up Twilight Princess HD, and you can tell it's been a decade since that game came out.
Oh, yeah.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I remember even when I played it, I felt like it was trying a little too hard to be grimdark.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, once I get past the bug collecting, I'm on the last bug collection right now. I'm really hoping that I'm more motivated in it. But it's still Zelda, so it's still fun on that basic Zelda level.
Totally.
I tried to start Final Fantasy Type 0 HD.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't do it. I tried. You might have played some portable games before and thought to yourself, I really wish this was a console experience. Yeah. This is the first time I've ever played a console game and went, I know why this was a portable experience.
Right.
It's just, it's meant to be taken in little bursts.
Yeah.
They didn't up-res enough stuff. For example, the in-between cutscenes still look like something off the History Channel where everything's done in sepia. Brent, I told you this, where it shows the military things. You're never playing this, right, Alex?
I don't have any intention to.
Fantastic. And Brent, I've already spoiled this for you. Super glad that I ended up putting it down because I looked up the spoiler plot for it. And it turns out the whole thing is a stable time loop where your characters have been going through this scenario 600 million times for these deities to try and get... I hate time travel stuff. I hate it. So, and you had to beat the game twice to get the real ending.
Start to finish.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's... I don't know how I feel about that.
Would not have been pleased.
Yeah.
And Ace Attorney 6, Spirit of Justice, I believe it's called, came out. I love the Ace Attorney series. And I pray at some point I will have somebody on who has played them so I can fanboy about them. It is the best... I can't even say that. I love it. It's a visual novel, essentially.
Yeah, totally.
And it would have been my favorite, but then I started playing Danganronpa this year.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, it's so good.
You and everyone else I know.
Oh. Do you know people who've played it? I'll have them on this show, because I want to talk with somebody.
I don't know about IRL friends, but just people I know online are freaking out about that game series.
Yeah, they actually, about a month, 2.5 months ago, they premiered the conclusion to this series in the form of 2 anime series. I've never been so gung-ho about anime in my memory. Maybe some Dragon Ball Z in middle school. Yeah. That's about all I can think of. But anyways, let's go ahead and get down to brass tacks. Alex, I believe you wanted to talk extensively about Extra Life because, correct me if I'm wrong, you are the head representation in St. Louis?
Yes.
Wonderful. Take it away.
Yeah. So Extra Life, just in a general sense, is a national organization. It's a nonprofit that is all about raising money for the Children's Miracle Network.
Okay.
And people do so by playing games, and that can be any type of game that they please. So, of course, video games, but also board games, card games, tabletop RPGs, mobile, hide-and-go-seek, Rochambeau, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to go with. And there is a National Game Day, which is a 24-hour period where people try to play as many games and raise as much money as humanly possible in a short amount of time. And that's coming up. It'll be November 5th, which, if you've ever seen V for Vendetta, is a really easy date to remember. And you see, I don't know what I'm going to do next year because I can't reuse that same joke because it's a different day each year. So what am I going to do next year? Cry? I don't know. I It's
well,
just cry deeply.
That is the best way to handle adversity.
To
is
handle
sobbing.
most life situations.
Right.
Yeah.
Just cry uncontrollably.
Cry deeply. And so, yeah, that'll be November 5th. And like I said, it's a 24-hour period where people play games and raise money. And some crazy people, I guess I'm pointing at myself for those who don't.
I'm about to say that doesn't communicate.
For some crazy people, myself included, they will attempt to do a 24-hour marathon.
Mm-hmm.
They stay up for the whole 24 hours and sleep deprive themselves into insanity, all for the sake of playing games to raise money for sick and injured children.
Now, I remember you've talked about these events before, and last year's, I believe, was particularly impressive to me. Would you mind going over what you guys did last year?
Yeah. So last year, and I guess in all fairness, this is not a new thing that has happened, but it was the first time that I had gotten involved to this degree, was that last year we worked with the Microsoft Store, and the local one in St. Louis. It's in the Galleria for those who are in the area. And we talked with them ahead of time and struck a deal where they would actually let us stay in the Microsoft Store for that whole 24 hours. They would let us stay there overnight. Of course, the rest of the mall closed, but they had a bathroom like in the back that we could use, and they did bring in food for us and everything else. And it was open to the public, so anybody else could join in.
Right.
And I guess I should clarify, when I say that they allowed us, and when I say us, I mean primarily the St. Louis Guild. And I guess perhaps I'm talking a bit out of order, but to backtrack a little bit, that's the St. Louis Guild for Extra Life is the thing that I'm the president for.
Okay.
It's the local group that goes to events and conventions and concerts and things of certain nerdy persuasions, mostly things like conventions and things like that. But anything where there's a large gathering of gamers or anime people or just nerds in general, and try to get them to sign up. So that's our primary goal, is to get registrations for the event.
And you had a fair bit of attendance. I know you said you had some radio people actually come out for that.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. I was really surprised to hear that, because I've heard some people try to organize these things before, and it's always with the best of intentions, but this was actually the first legit scale thing that I'd heard.
Right.
So if you don't mind sharing, how much money did you guys raise with that event?
So in the St. Louis area, so that's including everybody, not just me or the guild, but like everybody in the St. Louis area that signed up to raise money. Can't remember the exact number, but it was, I want to say, 82 to 83,000.
Yeah, I think that's some applause right there.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, yes. All good things.
Yeah.
And from a national perspective, and I should also clarify, this is year round. So although the big thing, the fundraising thing, like the game day, the November 5th thing, that's by and large where the majority of their donations come out. I don't want to say our donations like I'm speaking for the entire organization, but as far as Extra Life is concerned, the majority of the donations come in on that game day. But the fundraising does go all year long. So there are people that start January 1st, like, all right, let's register a new account and get this ball rolling, and start advertising and start streaming. That the number that I gave was from that full year long perspective. From a national perspective, the entire country and Canada raised just a little bit over 8.3 million.
Truly
impressive. Which was awesome. And that was our biggest number yet, which is both a curse and a blessing, because now it's a new year.
The bar is higher.
And the bar has been raised, and Josh knows that I struggle with things that are raised too high.
Exactly.
So it's a struggle. But
the top of the fridge is kind of difficult. 8.3 million, that is a tall fridge right there.
That's a tall glass of water.
Mm-hmm. Brent,
you just get a running start. You can leap over that.
There you go.
I actually have
the moon boots.
Well, I was thinking that too. Yes, the moon boots.
The bouncy shoes.
I just have carved little etchings on the side of my fridge so I can stick my feet as I climb up the side of it.
I like the idea of you just scaling your kitchen.
Yeah.
Just crawling around everywhere. Yeah. You had mentioned a couple things that I want to touch on just now. You'd said events. What are some events that you've personally attended? I know there have been a couple conventions. Could you give a couple examples there? And in fact, I think another one's coming up pretty soon.
You are correct, my good man. So yes, a couple of the bigger ones we've attended this year, I would say the biggest ones for us at least have been conventions. So Anime St. Louis has been our biggest one thus far this year. And I guess when I say biggest, I mean like the greatest number of on-site registrations. It's more or less what we use as a metric to kind of keep track of how well we're doing. Not how well we're doing. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to we're not doing good enough. We need to try harder and crack that whip, because that's the
Back
thing.
To the salt mines.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's as the president of this volunteer group. It's like I'm constantly afraid of being that guy who's constantly only after the bottom line. Because like I said, number of registrations is more or less the number by which we're judged on how good of a job we're doing. But there's
registration
also
over dollars?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, trying to get other people to sign up. But the idea behind it is that for every person you get to sign up, that's the potential for more donations that can come in.
Makes sense.
And that's what the guild's resources are intended to be spent towards.
Got it.
Both from a monetary perspective and also just people's volunteering their free time.
Mm-hmm.
The fundraising is just more of on an individual basis. That's just up to the individuals who choose to sign up. There are people in our guild that have never participated in Extra Life, and hopefully will this year. But you don't have to be a participant, or you don't have to have a certain number of years of experience to be a guild member, since the guild, from the perspective of getting people to sign up versus raising donations, or you can almost think of it as two separate efforts.
Mm-hmm.
You can totally do one without the other.
Okay.
Is how I would best sum it up. So yeah, I try to avoid focusing exclusively on the bottom line, because I don't want to feel like if there's a number of guild members that want to get together and do a fundraising thing, it's like, yeah man, do your thing, that'd be awesome. So not going to be like, no, we need more volunteers for this event, so you can't do that fundraising thing. Like that's no fun.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So in terms of the fundraising, because I want to clarify, is it like pledges, like when you do a race and you get someone to pledge for how far you? Okay.
Yeah. I often describe it as the nerdy friendly version of running a charity marathon.
That actually rolls very well into the next thing I had written down: streaming.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you primarily elicit your donations, isn't it? You stream playing stuff, and then people donate while you're playing. Is that what happens? Or
it's typically how I do it.
Okay.
But it's not required, especially when it comes to things like board games.
Right.
Because you can stream a board game. It's not impossible to do, but the logistics are trickier. So, especially if it's like a D&D session, you would need multiple webcams. Things would need to be focused on the dice getting rolled, the pages. Like, it gets a little weird, but you can stream a board game, but it's not required. Some people will stream their footage. Some people don't have the stable enough internet connection to do the streaming thing, so they might make YouTube videos and slap those bad boys on the internet.
All right.
Or they might just utilize social media. They might just take screenshots, slap it on Facebook or Twitter, and just maybe include a short description. Hey, check it out, I'm playing, I just got this awesome new achievement, or I'm doing this, I got this funny screenshot, or what have you, or just a mundane screenshot of a game that they're playing with a little description that says, hey, here's the game that I'm playing, and here's why I'm posting about it. I'm trying to raise money for insert hospital name here. And if you're feeling generous, here's my donation link.
Are there any specific hospitals that you find yourself working with in the area? I know that I have seen you post about Cardinal Glennon before.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that the only... There's another children's hospital.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah.
But don't let me impose.
No, you're absolutely correct. So there's two in the St. Louis area, two Children's Miracle Network hospitals. There's St. Louis Children's Hospital, and like you said, Cardinal Glennon Children's Medical Center, I think is the full name. Or maybe it's like SSM, Cardinal Glennon Children. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I worked there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I forgot about that. You're absolutely... So you of all people would know.
Yes.
Yes, you totally would. But you're right, yeah. So there's the two in the St. Louis area. And of course, the Children's Miracle Network is, as the name might imply, a network of hospitals that goes across the country and Canada. So and for those that choose to sign up, I always like to clarify, you can actually choose which hospital benefits from your fundraising efforts. So if you're living in St. Louis, but you're originally from another state, or you have a friend or a family member that received treatment at a specific hospital and you want to zero your donations in on that one specifically, you can actually choose with a little drop-down menu on the Extra Life registration page.
All right.
And say, hey, I live here, but here's the hospital I want my money to go to. So it's kind of a nice little personal touch.
All right. That sounds wonderful. And I think that will roll great into my next and currently final point. How would one get involved with this?
I'm so glad you asked. So you would need to go to the Extra Life website. It's extra-life.org.
And we will have all these links and everything up when... Don't think they have to find it on here.
Yeah,
we'll have
great.
all these links.
Oh, you're too good to us, Josh. But yes, you go to the website, and pretty much right from the get-go, it should see a big old registration link, or click here to register. And of course, it is free to sign up. There is an option to sign up for a premium account, or maybe they call it a platinum account. And if you do that, then you are eligible for certain incentives. So if you are a platinum member and you raise $200, you will get a shirt. And if you're a platinum member and you raise $500, you will get a medal. A little silver medal. And if you raise 1,000, you get a gold one.
Don't you have one of those?
I have a silver one, yeah. Last year I got, me personally, I raised $540, I think.
Look at you.
Which was the largest I'd ever raised. And kind of similar to my point earlier, I'm a little terrified of, the pressure's on to,
Well, I mean, worst case scenario, Alex Revs can always help bump that number up, right?
Alejandro Reves.
There
He's
you
a
go.
good guy.
I knew you probably had something.
He's an alright guy.
There you go.
And you can totally donate to yourself, by the way. And that's always one thing I always like to mention, like, if someone doesn't really if someone's not comfortable about, like, put my credit card online, you can, like, have a donation bucket or whatever, and just whatever money they donate, you just donate to yourself in that regard. So, there's multiple ways to do it.
Okay. Brent, did you have any questions about this?
Mm-mm.
Wonderful. Did you have any additional shout-outs you'd like to make for anybody in regards to Extra Life, Alex? Because I know there's a lot of people that go into helping this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know if there was anybody in particular you wanted to recognize, be it organizations, individuals, or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'd be happy to mention that the Children's Miracle Network office here in St. Louis has been great to work with.
Mm-hmm.
As the president of the volunteer group, I'm constantly talking with our Children's Miracle Network representative, who's primarily the events coordinator, but she does a number of other things. Her name is Melissa Heinstein, I think is how you pronounce her last name. I've actually never heard her last name pronounced. I've only seen it
written. Yeah.
But she's been fantastic to work with. She's actually fairly new at this position, but she's been doing a great job. And I constantly joke with her that, like, I'm having to bug her so often for questions or for things that we need. Like, we need to order more business cards, or we have this question about this event, or one of the guys suggests we do this as a fundraiser. Like, I'm constantly having to badger her for questions, but she's been very patient with me and with all the other guild members that we've been working with. And, of course, there's a number of our guild members that have been super, super active. My friend John Honeycutt, he's been definitely one of the most active guild members, especially lately. He's not an officer, although I'm hoping that maybe he would consider signing up or consider making himself available for something next year, since the end of my 2-year term is approaching. So it'll actually be up in March.
2-year term?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's not set in stone, but that was, as a guild, that was the term that we agreed on, was 2 years.
So do they have to find a new person, or are you voted in? How's that work?
We don't really have a set way of doing it, because this was our first term as a guild. So when I signed up for it in, I guess, April of 2015, that was my entry into signing up as, I guess, more than just than a participant, but as a volunteer, and in this case, as an officer for the guild. That was 2015 was the first year that St. Louis got its own guild. The election process for that was not something that I was privy to. All it really boiled down to was there was a kickoff meeting where, I don't exactly know how this worked, but I think it went out to just about anyone who would participate with Extra Life in the past so many years and had a zip code that was, within a certain radius of St. Louis. I think it was just a blast email that said, hey, St. Louis is getting its own Extra Life Guild. If this is something that you would be interested in and you would like to become more involved in a volunteer perspective, then come to this. We'll be meeting here on this day. We'll talk about how we're going to do this. And myself and probably 20 or 30 other people attended this event. And at the end of it, they were like, oh, by the way, we need officers. So if you're interested, here's a sheet of paper with kind of a list of, like, a description of each role. I think it might be something you might be interested in, that you could write your name on a piece of paper or something like that, and with the role that you have next to it. And I thought, oh, what the heck, I'll put my name in for president. I didn't really expect much, but I was like, yeah, why the heck not? This is something that, me personally, I've been participating for 5 years now. So it's an organization that I feel like I'm fairly familiar with. So it's like, yeah, I think this is something I'd like to do. So put my name in for it. This was in February. Then a month later, we got an email from Nick, our previous Children's Miracle Network representative, basically saying, all right, you're the president now, buddy.
Good job, president.
So I don't know if I was the only one or if that was just like a judgment call on their side, but we do have a president, a vice president, and a secretary. And then we also made an additional role for a social media administrator.
Okay.
So, and all 4 of those roles will be up for some sort of election.
Got it.
So I mean, I've told people, like, if you're in a role right now and you want to keep going, I'm not gonna pry it from your cold dead hands or anything. You can stay as long as you want, but
Dictator Alex is here to stay.
Yeah, no, it's like people can do what they want, but based on what I've heard from other guild members, it sounds like they're all interested in vacating their positions and getting some fresh talent in.
Got it.
So yeah, John's been great, and a number of others. Mike, who is also he lives closer to Washington, Missouri, so it's like an hour or so away. So he's not able to go to as many events, but still is great with supplying ideas and feedback and stuff like that. And
great to hear.
Stephanie is our administrator for social media. I actually just saw her yesterday at the Bit Brigade concert.
Oh, hey!
And
how was the turnout on that, by the way?
It was phenomenal.
Fantastic. I was a little nervous because I am currently taking antihistamines, so when I knocked out, and I get up early in the morning,
yes, you do.
I knew I couldn't make that show work, but there was a ton of interest shown.
There totally was.
Fantastic.
And a ton of interest was represented. It was at Off-Broadway, which is a pretty small little place, but it was pretty packed. I was pretty overjoyed.
We've been to some pretty sparsely populated shows, so I was kind of nervous, but I derailed you. You were talking about...
No, that's okay. Yeah, just give him the general shout-outs. Then Jason, who was our secretary, he's been great to work with. And also Jeremy Johnson, who is our vice president. He actually is one of the primary people that organizes Anime St. Louis and Pixel Pop Festival.
Oh, and that's coming up before too long, isn't it?
Yep. It'll be in, I believe, 2 weeks. Well, 2 or 3 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks.
Okay.
October 8th and 9th, I believe.
Got it.
And we'll be there.
No, that's next weekend.
Is it next weekend?
That's next weekend.
What, October 8th and 9th?
No, wait, that's got to be...
2 weekends away.
Dang.
Because Archon...
Oh, today's the 23rd.
Right.
Yeah, I messed that up.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, Archon is next weekend, though.
All right, well, it sounds like you're understandably really enthusiastic about this great cause, so glad to hear more about it. I don't know about you, Brent, but I've actually been meaning to ask you about getting involved because my last volunteer experience made me break out in hives, so I gotta find a different way to give back.
I feel like there's a story behind this.
You'll hear the story off microphone.
I was gonna say, I don't know if we
playing video games and doing good.
And I already stream. I have 95 episodes of Bloodborne.
There you go. Yeah, that's always like my biggest selling point when I tell people that. It's like, I don't know about you, but I'm going to be staying up all night playing games anyway, so I might as well do so for a good cause.
Exactly.
It's good for my, good for feeling good, good for, giving back to the community, which is always nice.
Zach, why are you doing up so late? Kara, I'm helping the children.
Do you want me to go to bed? Isn't to insinuate that you want these sick kids to not get the help they deserve.
They absolutely deserve it. And also, I am so close to getting all the shards of the Twilight Mirror. So close.
For the kids, though.
For the kids. Transitioning off of this topic and on to our main one, I was hoping I could do a better segue there.
That's good. I like it.
We are going to talk about early 3D platformers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this topic was chosen for a number of reasons. Brent wanted to talk about 3D platformers for a while, but depending on how you define it, those have been around for a decade and a half at that point.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do that in half an hour. But there are strong opinions about platformers that existed on the N64, PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, and PC technically, but none of us probably have experience with that. Alex, I know you have very positive opinions of at least some 3D platformers from then. Brent has been working more on it. I have a more negative opinion. In the interest of fair and balanced coverage, we'll give both of them, but we will not be overly vitriolic about it. So, Brent, why don't you bring up the ones you wanted to discuss, because I think you have the most limited knowledge base here.
Well, that's the problem. My number one, the one I have 100%ed, is the gold standard of that generation, which is Mario 64.
Yeah.
And Mario 64... There was an interesting thing about Mario 64, and it never even occurred to me at the time, was how they introduced the idea of a 3D camera.
Yes.
I always thought it didn't even occur to me till years later, the way they explained the camera was moving by making a cameraman.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that being a topic, because other 3D platformers don't do that.
Yeah.
They start the game with the guys.
Yeah, they start... It is the gold standard. I actually have very little to complain about Mario 64, except, Brent, what is the big issue?
It's the big issue with any of a water level.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
So it almost feels unfair to complain about it, because when we talk about Banjo-Kazooie, I'm going to complain about it. When we talk about Conker's Bad Fur Day, going to complain about it.
As you should. As you should.
Even up through PS2, PS3 now, they still really haven't nailed
water levels. Can take momentum and slam it into a wall.
They totally can. I always love the atmosphere and the music of water levels. They always nail so many things about water levels and making them seem cool. And then you start to get into the water controls. I don't know if I've ever played a game that did water levels not poorly.
The only game, and this is getting mildly off topic, that I have played that did water levels well was a game called Beat Buddy Tale of the Guardian.
Yeah.
And the reason it did the water level well was because the whole game was a water level.
That's the thing,
and you directed by just pressing in a direction. You didn't have to switch between the platforming and the swimming. That's where it loses it.
And speaking of all water levels, if Wikipedia is to be believed, Echo is technically a platformer.
That's a stretch. I guess you could say
see,
the same
thank you.
How about Aquaria? Also 100% underwater.
Aquaria?
Yeah. It's a PC game, so I don't know. That's the thing.
okay.
But just games in general.
I did remember seeing it on
race.
the list now that you say it.
Okay.
But
I really don't think I'd count Echo personally. It's like exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adventure, yeah.
And it was 2D. Oh, there was a
So,
3D one.
PlayStation.
You brought that up.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I never played that one, so I can't speak to it.
I played the demo for it on that PlayStation demo disc.
Yeah, buddy.
But like Mario, you're talking about water levels. The one that always infuriated me, the one where you raise, I can't remember the name of the level, the one where you raise and lower the water levels.
You think of the water
Wet Dry
temple?
World. Everyone's favorite.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It has the
Wet Dry
electric
World,
things.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Oh,
The
there's so
town.
many times when you're trying to climb up things, you're trying to get the camera angle right.
Yep.
Oh, it's infuriating.
And it's almost like, I know the part that you're talking about too, and it's almost like they knew, okay, our camera is kind of limited, and we need to make this challenging. So this platforming section by itself is not that challenging, but if we put it at a weird angle, the camera will not possibly cooperate. So it's almost like it was by design.
Well, and Mario 64, one of the things it did tremendously was it paced the levels so well.
Yeah.
Because the worst, most hate-inducing levels, looking at you, Rainbow Ride, those are the end.
Yes, the very end.
So it's not like, for example, Banjo-Kazooie, hear me out, Brent just got to this, the rusty ship level.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I hated it.
That's a tough one, man.
With every fiber of my being. But we'll get on to that once we're done with Mario 64. We've talked about this before, how you like 64 over Galaxy, for example.
Yeah, I do.
What about 64 really called to you the most out of those?
I'll be perfectly honest, it's a lot of rose-colored glasses. Super Mario 64 was the first video game I ever played in my entire life.
Oh, look at
So
you.
that laid the foundation for, freaking everything. But trying to look at it subjectively and, not trying my best to remove said rose-tinted glasses, I appreciate just the fact that it did so much with, it's not like there weren't previous attempts to do 3D platformers, but it did feel like they kind of had an idea like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes, but if this does well, then yeah, this is kind of going to be our golden standard, just like Brent said. So just from a historical perspective, I just really appreciate how they were like, we need to 3Dify Mario, and we need it to not suck, so we're going to have to get weird. We're going to have to experiment, and like the camera was awesome, but not perfect. They're like, talking about Wet Dry World. There are parts in the game where the camera just does not cooperate, and I'm sure a lot of that was just technical limitations. Galaxy, like a lot of these newer games, have figured that part out. But
that was something I was talking about with Josh earlier. I'm like, it's acceptable for those games because it's limitations. They're learning how to do it. If it's now, it's poor game design.
It's like, well, we don't have that excuse anymore.
And that's, I recognize when I say some of my negativity. It's because it's a product of the time. Viewed in the perspective, the lens of when it came out, Mario 64 deserved every ounce of praise it got. The acrobatics incorporated in his movement they're still amazing.
They are.
I'm not going to pretend, because you can still see when you play a current 3D Mario game, it plays almost identical.
It does.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, if you've played Mario 64, you can pick up Mario Sunshine or Galaxy or the new
3D World.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously there will be new things to learn, but you'll feel right at home. You won't have to adjust.
So let's take this opportunity, because we're generally in agreement that Super Mario 64 was a standard.
Awesome game,
Let's move on to something a little more divisive, at least because of me. Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah.
You, Alex, I believe, love that game. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you backstart Ukulele?
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I didn't realize until I watched the trailer and played Banjo-Kazooie that Ukulele is Banjo-Kazooie 15 years later.
Pretty much. Yeah.
It looks identical.
Yeah.
So you actually got to meet Grant Kirkhope, the guy who created the music for Banjo-Kazooie.
My freaking dream come true, man.
So let's let you fanboy about that game for a minute.
I mean, I could fanboy about just Grant Kirkhope in general. Just awesome dude.
He's a cool guy.
He is a really cool dude, and gave a Q&A, a number of Q&As and panels at MagFest this year, and I had to catch myself. It was this year, not last year, but the previous MagFest. And getting to meet the guy behind all the music for Banjo-Kazooie, and also GoldenEye, and I don't think he did Conker's Bad Fur Day. I don't think he did Perfect Dark either, but he did, I don't know, there's a couple other Rare games. I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's done a music for a number of Rare games, Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie being two of the big ones. But yeah, I really am a huge fan of the series. I almost feel like Super Mario 64 did such a great job of, like I think Brent said it perfectly, it set this golden standard. Then Banjo-Kazooie was kind of like, okay, well, how can we improve upon this, or at least how can we build upon it? And I feel like Banjo-Kazooie was just the logical progression from that. The whole game feels just alive with personality. The first time you pick up a health pickup, or a health item, it shows up in the little dialogue box, and it's got little eyes, and it starts talking to you. Hey man, I'm a honeycomb. Thanks for picking me up, bro. I'm going to heal up your health. And he doesn't say it exactly that way, but he should have.
I'm about to say, that's appropriately 90s.
Yeah. No, it would have said things like tubular red.
You're getting your 90s and your 80s.
Yeah. People can't. You just assume people know I was doing like the hang loose thing with my hand.
Absolutely.
When I said that, so just assume that you have a visual image. But yeah, I feel like the whole game had such a vibrant personality to it. Everything was so colorful. The music, of course, was wonderful. And like when you would dive into the water, the music would change from being like super, not necessarily loud and bombastic, but it would switch to a more like a soothing harp-based version of that same soundtrack to kind of fit with the underwater tone. Granted, you still had to wrestle with underwater controls, but again, like we said earlier, that's just a thing. But all the characters that you interact with, the NPCs, Mumbo, and the Jinjos, I believe is what they're called. I for some reason, I went through my entire childhood thinking they were Jingos.
Yeah, Jinjo, I did too.
Yeah.
And as I was talking to Kara, because we played through this about 6 months ago, I go, I don't know if it's Jinjos, I don't know if it's Jingos, but both of them feel vaguely racial to me. Like, I'm really uncomfortable saying this term.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where if you're referring to somebody as, see, now I don't even want to say it. But if you're referring to that as a person or any type of person, then you might want to be careful.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't want. Never mind.
Granted, I don't know anybody where if I touch them, they swirl around and like fly up and shout their own name as they shoot off into the stratosphere. But I want to.
It doesn't go great every time I try it, so
because then you have to repair the roof.
Exactly.
Shoot through it.
And this is a new roof, you don't want that.
This is happy housewarming. Here's a hole. Here's a hole in the roof.
What about, and this is a thing, do you think that you have some nostalgia? When was the last time you played Banjo-Kazooie?
So yes, I know you didn't complete the question, but there was totally nostalgia. Last time I played it was a few years ago.
Okay, because we only played it when it was released on the Rare Replay.
Oh, yeah.
So we are pretty recent on it. And I saw the fun, bubbly music. The characters are enjoyable. Unfortunately, I came to that game well after Rare's other games, so it just seemed like a cleaner version of Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Because it was.
Yeah, Conker's Bad Fur Day was, I don't know how long after Banjo-Kazooie 1.
It was at the very tail end of the N64. What was it about it? The controls just really frustrated me at certain points. For example, we collected everything in every level up to the Rusty Bucket Bay. That was the name of the level.
That level. That's pretty decently far into the game.
Oh, yeah, we had 2 levels left. We had Rusty Bucket Bay and Click Clock Woods.
I'm in Click Clock Woods right now.
Yeah.
I'm showing that up.
And there were a couple points. One, there is a part where you have to open the top of a pyramid. Brent, you had this complaint. And it's 30 seconds to get to the top of the pyramid.
Yep.
Except they start the timer and then they show you the door open for 6 seconds.
Yep.
Why would you do this?
Yep. And then at the 2-second mark, because I got to the door,
the
door starts shutting.
Yep.
It's like, why?
I know the exact part you're talking about. And yes, it is almost to the second. It's almost like if you delay in the slightest, just get back to where the start point is because you're just not going to make it.
And Brent was going to give me some sass, I'm positive, because the sled race.
Yes.
He goes... Because he saw me and Kara struggle with the sled race.
Okay.
And he sends me a message and he goes, so how long did it take you to beat that sled race? And I go, the first one we beat almost instantly.
Yes.
The second one was a living nightmare. He goes, there's a second one? I knew where this was going, and I will not give you that satisfaction, sir.
Yeah, that second sled race is a doozy, absolutely.
The second sled race, and going back to, like you said, what, wet, dry world? And
yes.
How the camera seemed like what they were trying to make you fight against. There's a point in the Gloop Gloop Swamp, Bubble Gloop Swamp, where there's a timer, a very short timer, and you have to run across this walkway really high up in the air.
Yeah. Is that the one you got stuck on?
We didn't get stuck on it, but it was just frustrating because it didn't seem like it was a platforming challenge so much as a camera challenge.
Yeah, I know the exact
So that one, because it's like 10 seconds to get across that, I position it, then I butt bomb the thing, and then I just slowly, but as fast as I can, steady, just make it across. I got it.
But it didn't feel like a platforming challenge is what got me. It felt like I was fighting with the camera because if I touched anything, the camera would go boop, and then I'd right off the... And it didn't set me back to an easy place. I had to crawl all the way back.
That's one of the complaints I have about Banjo-Kazooie would be that there are times when I'm trying to turn the camera to behind him, when I'm trying to face the other way, where I swing it around and if I hit the wall, I bounce back to where I was.
And... Alex, you got a computer science undergrad, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So you know that's just an early technical limitation where they had the camera set as a fixed thing, and they said, if it runs into a wall, don't let it run into a wall.
I imagine.
That's... I took a computer graphics class that I failed miserably, but I remember that.
No, you're totally right, and all the complaints I'm hearing are 1,000% warranted. It is a...
But that being said, I thoroughly enjoyed it,
totally.
so...
But it's a totally normal thing to be frustrated by that. I think that was very much a rare thing at the time. Did either of you ever play Donkey Kong 64?
That was actually going to be another topic that we touched upon.
I have not.
Okay.
But I know two people that have varying opinions.
Yeah. Mine is not positive.
I wouldn't expect that it would be. I enjoy that game, but there's like a finite number of going bananas that I still remember to this day as just being nigh impossible. It's just unreasonable.
Let's take this opportunity, actually. Yep. You good with Banjo-Kazooie?
I was going to say, do you want to give your Banjo-Tooie anecdote?
Oh, yeah, Banjo-Tooie anecdote. So, I won't name who this was.
Oh, boy.
And they go, I'm about to wrap up Banjo-Kazooie. I think I'd like to play something similar. I go, well, why don't you just play Banjo-Tooie? Why... Is that the sequel to Banjo-Kazooie? I don't think I'd ever actually heard it as Banjo-Tooie.
Right, yeah.
So I never put together that it goes Kazooie-Tooie. I'm just sitting there staring at him going, really? It's one of those things where you can see where they're coming from.
Totally, yeah.
But you still gotta make fun of it.
Oh, it's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah. Let's transition
Okay.
Let's go to...
Donkey Kong?
Donkey Kong. So...
Hang on. So, before I was about to say, we do know Nick, who's been on the show,
he's on it all the time.
And Mark, who was on the Halo one, are both incredible fans of
Donkey Kong
64.
Oh, cool.
I am not as much of a fan because I felt like the introduction of the Kongs, first off, all of them but Diddy Kong, why didn't they put Dixie in? Why did they have to introduce Trixie? It doesn't make sense to me. But that's minutia of the minutia.
Yes.
The introduction of the characters seemed like they were just attempting to cram more mechanics into that game that didn't necessarily jive with the rest of it. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Lanky Kong inflate into a balloon?
Yep.
But Diddy Kong had a jetpack.
Yep.
Why did they need both of those?
I cannot answer that question. I have no idea.
The gameplay, it just seemed like Trixie Kong, her thing was she shrunk down really small.
And she had a little hover jump.
Exactly. It felt like they had so many ideas and we can't put all these on these guys. Instead of doing arguably the better Banjo-Kazooie route where they just transformed you to appropriate situations.
Yeah.
They had 5 characters, which was frustrating on a different level because to get all of the blueprints necessary to extend the time limit near the end, you had to kill the special enemies with the hair color. Yeah. See, Brent, I was saying all this stuff.
I remember all too well.
It was frustrating and it was unnecessary, and I remember one thing in particular got to me. When you were going up to the very, very end, you had to have this many bananas.
Yep.
Then you had to have an N64 and a rare coin.
Yes.
Where do I get these?
Yeah.
And you had to beat Donkey Kong twice to get the rare coin, or was it the N64 coin?
I think it was the rare coin, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, you had to play these little mini games.
The arcade games, yeah.
And these were necessary to beat the game, weren't they?
Yeah.
They weren't easy.
That's the thing. I don't remember if they were necessary to beat the game.
They might have been necessary to get 101%. They would have had to be necessary.
Yeah, they were absolutely. But something I would have to double check. So
I was about to say you have to have these coins to beat the game.
That I don't think you need.
Okay, I complete it though.
Thought you need. I could be wrong. It's been over a decade since I played this game.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up honestly.
But then the final fight. Did you beat the game?
Yeah.
Okay.
101% that whole thing.
Wow. Good for you.
I mean, this was back in the day, man.
Back in the day when that's all you had. Yeah. The final fight seemed so arbitrary, like cycling through the different Kong forms.
Yeah,
it seemed like they missed a huge opportunity to have Donkey Kong doesn't even knock him out at the end. Nope. It's the big one.
I think it's Chunky Kong. Is his name?
Maybe Chunky Kong.
Yeah, it's Funky Kong in this one.
Funky Kong.
He's one of the NPC merchant.
Okay, I couldn't remember because. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, going through all the other funky iterations in my head.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, so it just felt like a lot of ideas that they really wanted, and they just kind of mashed them in, and they said, and this will be Donkey Kong. Like, it doesn't really feel like a Donkey Kong game to me. It feels like they wanted to make another 3D platformer.
Yeah.
Like, well, we have this IP we haven't used in a while.
Did Donkey Kong come out before Banjo-Kazooie?
I want to say no. I could be wrong.
Don't believe that it did.
Well, I asked because my one friend, when I was telling him we were going to be doing this topic and we were talking about it, I brought up, well, I don't know much about Donkey Kong 64. Yeah. And he's like, oh, I hated that game.
A lot of people
He's like, but I loved Banjo-Kazooie. And I looked at him and I go, they were made by the same people.
Yep.
And he goes, well, they made Banjo-Kazooie better.
Yes, well, I would probably agree with that statement, honestly. And yeah, I do remember that Donkey Kong, I don't know if it required it.
It did. It did.
You know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, the expansion pack.
And that was very well after the
Banjo-Kazooie 1. Donkey Kong, wasn't that one of the games that came with it?
Donkey Kong and Majora's Mask were the two games that I believe came with the expansion pack.
I thought Perfect Dark might have.
Maybe.
I can't remember.
I mean, mine came with Majora's Mask.
Okay. So. I know I got mine 10 years after the N64 was discontinued.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can get them super cheap. Yeah, it's
right.
It's pretty much a non-issue.
I have friends. Some N64s come with them that way. So
That's true. That's true. It's a good point.
And let's see. So it actually seems like we're in more agreement on Donkey Kong 64.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I do enjoy the game, but all the complaints about it are 100% warranted. And it's like, I think people have summarized it as like the platformer collectathon taken to its most violent extreme.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I would agree. Like, I like collectathons. I like the ability, like the sensation of collecting things, but it's almost excessive, and I think I would agree with that notion.
And that's something that kind of hurt Banjo-Kazooie for me was, especially since it was on the Rare Replay, it had all of the achievements associated. Okay. And this is going to be a topic brought up at a later time, how I believe achievements have kind of ruined video gaming.
Which is funny.
We'll deal with it later. That's the only reason I would ever collect all 900 notes in Banjo-Kazooie, because there's an achievement for it. But it's essentially collecting all the coins in Mario. Yeah. Except, they're just as bizarrely spread out.
Yeah.
So, I can't get into this without talking about achievements.
No,
I feel like it's an unnecessary collectathon the way it's implemented in current gaming. I bet it was a lot more viable on the N64, but as I did not play it on the N64, that is not the lens I'm viewing.
Well, at least with the music notes, that because you need them, unlike the... No, because, there's 100 coin star in every level of Mario 64, but you need all the music notes to progress to the door in Banjo-Kazooie. So
you don't need all of them.
You don't need all of them, but you can bypass...
What do you need all of to get to the grunty fight at the very end? Is that the music notes or the jiggies?
You don't need all of anything. You need a certain number.
I hope you don't need all the jiggies, because I just glitched a part of my game out. So back to Banjo really quick. There is that in the snow level, one of those grunty faces that you butt slam, and it brings up the jiggy above the entrance to the snow level. so you can use the flying platform to get up there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I died or something. Something happened where I didn't get out to it, and I came back later, and the button's pressed in, but there is no platform. I cannot use it. It's
Whoa.
cool.
That's curious.
I'd have to look online. I've never heard of that happening.
Now, I could have sworn to fight Grunty, you needed more. To get to her board game, I know you need a certain amount. And after that, I considered the game beaten because we were so fed up.
Notes that you need to certain, from what Mark told me.
You need a bunch of notes, and you need a bunch of jiggies, but you don't need all of them.
Okay.
If you get all of the notes, you can open these doors that will give you, they'll permanently increase the maximum number of eggs, feathers, and golden feathers that you can carry.
Fancy.
So that was early Nintendo 64 achievement equivalents, where it was some sort of way to reward the players that got everything.
Sorry.
Oh, no. Well, the only other thing is that with the musical notes, and this is one of the biggest complaints about Banjo-Kazooie, and like all the other complaints we've talked about, this one's perfectly valid because it understandably ticked a lot of people off, but in the Xbox 360 arcade and the rare replay versions of Banjo-Kazooie, if you collect a musical note and exit the level, it's saved that you have collected that musical note. In the N64 version, it did not. If you died during a level at any point and you were on the 99th note, too freaking bad. You have to collect all 100 from the get-go. Rusty Bucket Bay was my nightmare.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Casuals
that
right
one
here,
part,
buddy. High five, Brent.
That one part where you have to go into the engine room. And there's four musical notes behind the propellers. I made the mistake of saving that part for last. This is how we learn. Because if the propellers touch you, it's an instant death.
Oh my.
So it was... Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Maybe it wasn't instant death, but obviously it's an open pit, so you just freaking die anyway.
Oh, awful.
So that was like a very significant improvement when they did the re-releases. But when I played through the game a year or two ago, that was something I was like, oh, that's right. This was before they implemented that, isn't it? Oh, man.
Oh, this is a nightmare. One thing I will give them credit for, and this was not actively implemented until it was released on the Xbox Live Arcade, was the stop and swap, with the idea with the codes that would go between Kazooie to Tooie, but they thought that the cartridge would hold, the expansion cartridge would hold the memory for 30 seconds when you remove it. Turned out it was 3. So they could not implement it. But they were able to implement it when it was brought over to Xbox Live. Incredibly ambitious. I give them full marks for the idea and the implementation a decade later. Let us talk for our last example, because we went a little long on those. I want to talk about at least one non-Nintendo 3D platformer. Totally. Now, I have an idea. Brent, do you have any ideas what you'd like to talk about?
I mean, I'm going to leave this one up to you guys.
And so let's go to Alex, since you are our special guest today.
And I feel I'm going to disappoint you. I actually didn't own a Sony product at all until I got my friend's PS3 a couple years ago.
Dun.
So I've played a few of the... I played, I think, one of the Spyro the Dragon games. I played one of the Crash Bandicoot games. Actually, maybe one or two of them. But not all the way through. So, I don't know if I'm probably the least qualified person at this table, honestly.
It doesn't matter, because you touched on the one we were going to do. Crash Bandicoot.
Cool.
First game was garbage.
Oh, really? That's unfortunate.
So, does anybody have any opinions before I launch into why I dislike the game?
Enjoy it, but it is a lot of... Which was why we were debating if it was 3D platformer, because there's a lot of the running away levels.
Yeah. There's a lot of running away levels. However, you are still on a 3D plane while you're moving and jumping.
Yeah.
And on top of that, so again, we gotta look at this through the lens of when it was released. Back on PS1, it was actually pretty awesome.
Yeah.
When you look at it now, do you remember how you save?
I don't think I played Crash 1, honestly. I think 2 is the one I played.
First one has a really bad save.
You can only save in bonus levels, and you can only get bonus levels by collecting 3 things in a level.
Oh.
It was not well done.
Yikes.
I have actually heard a lot of people say that Crash Bandicoot 2 is where you should really start playing, because the first one is crazy basic. It has a terrible save system. There's a ton of chasing levels. It also has some 2D platforming levels, which kind of defeats the purpose there. I know I'm splitting hairs there, but we're talking about 3D platforming.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So the first one, I remember Kara had such strong nostalgia for it, and it was on super sale, so I got it for like $1.
Yeah.
And started playing it, and I go, this is all you, honey. I am not going to keep playing this because it was just very poorly designed by nowadays standards.
That's fair.
I've heard that the later ones were better.
But to say, I think most of any nostalgia I have is from the later ones.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people. But I'm curious to see what tweaks they'll make in the Crash HD remake.
Yeah.
Because were you watching that conference?
I wasn't watching it. I just read about it after the fact.
Brent, were you watching
Yeah,
it?
of course.
So the disappointment, do you remember that?
Uh-oh.
So the guy came out and he had the bouncing shadow of Crash Bandicoot, and everybody's psyched because there's been all these teasers.
Yeah.
Nathan Drake was playing.
I literally joked, not knowing it was a teaser earlier that day to Josh. I'm like, I hope they announce a Crash Bandicoot game. And then I'm like, are you kidding me?
Uncharted 4 has Nathan Drake playing Crash Bandicoot. So everybody's like, this has to be a sign. So he comes out and it's bouncing, and he goes, who's excited about Crash Bandicoot? Everybody gets excited.
Yeah.
He's going to be in Skylanders. What? Are you serious? And he goes, and we're going to do an HD remake of the first game. Yay! We were kind of hoping. Yeah, and eventually we'll do the second and third one.
Yep.
Like, you could have deflated. It's amazing people didn't die from oxygen deprivation from the sighing.
Off note, I think that was the Sears comparison to the Final Fantasy thing.
I was thinking the same thing. Final Fantasy VII logo. Oh my gosh, it's happening!
Well, that was the thing. We're going to step off for there. When they were announcing it, the Sony guy came out for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Mm-hmm. He came out and he goes, prepare to go back to the world of Final Fantasy. Everybody's going crazy. World of Final Fantasy.
Yep.
Cuts to the crowd. You would have thought they would have just executed that guy's dog on stage. They're sitting up there. Stone face.
Yep.
Just awful. And then the guy comes back out. He's like, and also this. And then Final Fantasy VII. Like, they couldn't get to the meat fast enough.
That's awesome.
It was amazing.
Because, wasn't it a couple years prior to that where they were like, oh man, here we go with Final Fantasy, and they showed, like, Final Fantasy VII, like, yeah, guess what, guys? Final Fantasy VII, the, like, remastered edition
on PS1.
Is going to be on PS1. Or it's on being on PS3 now.
PS Classic. Yeah.
And it was kind of similar. Like, everyone was like, God,
why?
It's like they knew. It's like they did it on purpose.
Yeah. Well, and we won't talk about it, but there's a lot of stuff about that 7 remake that has my eyebrow.
So I think another one we should touch on really quick, Spyro, really fast.
We should talk about Spyro, but all of us only have passing experience.
That's but it was a big platform.
It was a big platform.
I mean, it's still going, because Skylanders is Spyro technically.
Technically. But it actually added a lot of twists on the platformer element that were really interesting. The gliding was really interesting. The fire breathing was just an attack, but it was a range attack, which was something... Mario 64 did not have fire flowers, did it?
No, it did not.
It did not. So it was a range attack. They had the gliding. They were really interesting, brightly colored characters for the time. So
like the charging, where you would get on the little I can't remember what they call it, but like little arrow things, and it would like shoot you off, and you would have to like ramp off of certain jumps. They were really tricky, but they were just a lot of fun.
So I don't have enough experience to say anything negative about it. I'm assuming it suffered from the same thing all those early platformers did. But it might have actually, and again, I am speaking totally out of my butt on this one, since it needed to have a camera that accommodated for flying that can't be right on the character.
Right.
So the camera might have been more forgiving in that game.
I don't recall having any camera problems.
See, only playing the demos and stuff, I can't remember. I don't remember it being that bad.
Yeah.
And I'm positive we'll get a ton of comments on other great 3D platformers.
Oh,
I know
so many.
Nick had mentioned Gex was one he was...
I'm going to quickly mention, because I don't want to talk about too much, since when we talk about my movie and TV video games eventually, A Bug's Life was technically a platformer. It was kind of fun to play.
Yeah.
PlayStation was the thing I played.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that jibber jab, of course.
Yeah.
But if it was fun, it was fun. But that was PS1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't count that. I remember really enjoying Spider-Man on PS1.
Yeah.
It did. So Wikipedia counted not that Spider-Man. What's the one about time? It was counting that as a platform.
That's a newer game, though.
But there were some Spider-Man games on there classified as 3D platformers.
Well, yeah, but it also
classified God of War.
I would not call God of War a platformer. I remember really enjoying Spider-Man, but that was more of an action game than a platformer.
There were platforming sections. That's a good point. It's like, it's really a platformer.
Exactly. But are there any other things about 3D platformers, early 3D platformers we want to talk about? They were integral to the foundation of where platformers are today.
What is considered the first one for that generation? Because I didn't read that.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Had a bug game for Sega Saturn.
Sega Saturn. Nobody owned a Sega Saturn, so
that I know of.
I owned one years after the fact. I remember playing Bug at a friend's house. I did not like it. That's all I remember about it. Another thing that deserves honorable mention, Ape Escape. I loved Ape Escape.
Yeah, man.
First game that required you to have the DualShock. I loved the first game so much.
I remember reading a thing about the Ape Escape. It was like a Destructoid article or something where they were posting up old magazine reviews of stuff and reading the review where the guy's like, I don't know how I like these control sticks.
That's an example of time marches on, and it actually works great for the context of this, as we're not just solely ragging on them. We can see how they were crucial to where it has come. I remember, in the vein of the DualShock thing, one of the early Alien games on PS1, they said the real nightmare is the controls. Strafing, moving with one stick and aiming with the other. Who could ever handle this?
Gosh, we were so spoiled with GoldenEye. That's all we knew.
Yeah, and we are in such a brave new world right now.
What a time to be alive.
Let me tell you. But on that note, I think we're good on this?
I think so.
Fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and Brent, thank you for coming on.
As always.
Alex, thank you very much for coming on and talking about your wonderful organization and your thoughts on these old platformers.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
I like to think so.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget to check us out on our socials. And until next time, this is Co-Opinions.